Hello everyone and welcome to your guide to popular builds and Heroes of the Storm. My name is Death and today we'll be checking out another one of my favorite heroes, Muradin, and his tanky Thunder Clap build. But before we get into any of that, a quick disclaimer. These guides are not written in stone. They are here to point you in the right direction, but ultimately they are a tool to help you learn the hero on your own. Now we've gotten through that, let's take a look at Muradin. He is a melee warrior from the Warcraft universe. Muradin is a true dwarf's dwarf. When he isn't fighting, drinking, and eating, he is drinking, eating, and playing the brutal dwarven game of Pogs. His kit is easy to pick up but hard to master, allowing him to disrupt the enemy team with stuns and slows. Just a note, this build is best used against enemy teams that have a lot of melee assassins, warriors, or auto attackers. Before we get into his talent build, let's take a quick look at his skills. His trait is called Second Wind. This grants Muradin some very good health regen whenever he hasn't taken damage for 4 seconds. And when his health is below 40%, he regains even more health. This basically gives Muradin some very strong self-sustain during the laning phase and after team fights. His Q is called Stormbolt. This is a 10-second cooldown skill shot that does moderate damage to the first enemy it hits and stuns them for 1.5 seconds. This is an amazing ability that allows you to dish out some damage and disrupt an enemy ultimate, prevent them from chasing a teammate, or even stop them from escaping. His W is called Thunder Clap. This is an 8-second cooldown AoE ability that deals moderate damage to nearby enemies and slows their movement speed by 25% for 2.5 seconds. This is a great tool that allows you to peel the enemy from your team by slowing them down and dealing some damage. Muradin's E is called Dwarf Toss. This is a 12-second cooldown AoE skill shot that launches you at the targeted location, dealing some damage to enemies when you land. This is a very good tool that not only deals a little bit of damage, but also allows you to dodge skill shots, escape from fights, or even engage the enemy team if you're feeling really aggressive. Now that we've covered his base abilities, let's take a quick look at his heroics. His first heroic is called Avatar. This is a 90-second cooldown defensive ability that transforms you into a giant dwarf made of stone, granting you a massive amount of health. This is a good tool that allows you to soak up even more damage, stick in the fight longer, and disrupt the enemy even more. Muradin's second heroic is called HAYMAKER. This is a 10-second cooldown targeted ability that stuns the enemy hero while you wind up a punch that deals heavy damage and sends them flying back, hitting enemies in the way for heavy damage and knocking them aside. This is a very fun ability that allows you to not only deal a lot of damage, but also completely displaces an enemy. This ability can be a little tough to get the positioning right at first, but once you get the hang of it, you can deal a lot of damage and send a squishy enemy into your team's open arms. Now that we've covered his basic abilities, let's leap into the talents. At level 1, you're going to go with Reverberation. This gives your Thunderclap some extra utility by making it so enemies hit by Thunderclap have their attack speed reduced by 50% for 3 seconds. This is a great tool against auto attack heroes and melee heroes that can really reduce the amount of damage that they can pump out. At level 4, you're going to take Thunderburn. Whenever you use your Thunderclap, after the initial burst of damage, it creates a field on the ground that after 2 seconds explodes again, dealing a little bit of damage and slowing the enemy by 25% for 2 seconds. This is just even more damage mixed in with a delayed slow that can help peel enemies away from your teammates. At level 7, you have a choice to make. Your first choice, and likely your go-to choice, is going to be Piercing Bolt. This makes it so your Stormbolt now pierces through the first enemy hit, allowing you to stun one additional enemy. You still need to make sure that the enemies are lined up, but this will allow you to stun more enemies or even get to enemies who are hiding behind summoned creatures. Your other option is to go with Battle Momentum, which allows your basic attacks to reduce ability cooldowns by half a second. This will allow you to pump out a lot more abilities, which means more stuns, slows, and damage. For Muradin's heroic, I would recommend going with Avatar. For this build, you will be in the thick of the enemy, looking to disrupt them constantly, which means that you will likely be the focus of their attacks. Avatar is a very strong defensive tool that will allow you to stay alive and really punish the enemy. At level 13, you once again have a choice to make. The choice comes down to personal preference and the enemy team's makeup. If the enemy has only a few melee types, or you're catching enemies out, then I would recommend going with Thunder Strike. This increases the damage of Thunderclap by 300% as long as you only hit one enemy with it. This ability doesn't reduce Thunderclap's effectiveness in groups, it just adds a lot of extra damage and really punishes enemies who solo dive in or get caught out of position. If the enemy team has a lot of dive heroes, or they stay grouped up a lot, then you may want to take Burning Rage. This gives you a fire aura that deals light damage per second to all nearby enemies. The damage may seem low, but just keep in mind that it is constant damage that all nearby enemies will be taking, and with Muradin's kit, you should have no problem keeping them close. At level 16, you have another choice to make that once again comes down to the enemy team's makeup. Your first choice is Stone Form. This is a 60-second cooldown ability that once activated allows you to heal for 50% of your maximum health over 8 seconds. This is an amazing all-around tool that allows you to get some oh crap healing in there, which can allow you to stick in the fight longer or save your life during a poor engagement. Just keep in mind that while this ability is on cooldown, your second wind is disabled. Against teams with a lot of auto attackers, you're likely going to go with Imposing Presence, which reduces the attack speed of enemies who attack you by 40%. This is an amazing tool that can really hinder auto attack heroes. Just keep in mind that the debuff will only last for as long as they are attacking you. Continuing on with the trend of choices, you have another one to make at level 20. This one really comes down to personal preference. If you feel like the enemy is dealing a lot of damage to you, or you just want to be extra tanky when your team really needs it, then you will go with Hardened Shield. This is a 60-second cooldown that reduces damage taken by 75% for 4 seconds. This ability is extremely useful to reduce a lot of burst damage during team fights. Your other option is to go with Rewind. This is a 60-second cooldown that resets the cooldown of all of your basic abilities. That means you can get out more damage, more stuns, and more slows, which can allow you to really control the flow of the fight or peel that enemy off your healer. Muradin's Thunder Clap Build is a very strong build that brings okay lane clear, great self-sustain, great crowd control, good peel. It allows him to really punish melee types and auto attackers, makes him very tanky, and gives him the tools to engage or escape. However, his abilities are very expensive, and if used too frequently, he can run out of mana very quickly. His stun is a skill shot which can be blocked by minions and summons, and knowing when to use Dwarf Toss can be tricky. Alright, now that we've gone over all of that, let's go over some quick tips for Muradin. Don't be too aggressive in lane. Your abilities are extremely mana intensive, and if you're using your abilities too often, you may be out of mana by the time the first objective starts. That being said, if you are laning against someone who has poor wave clear or lacks a lot of burst damage, then feel free to walk on over and give him a good solid whack in the face with your hammer every once in a while. I mean, you are Muradin after all. If you aren't sure when to use Dwarf Toss, then try and save it as an escape. The damage it does isn't that much, and most of the time you can engage by just walking into the enemy team. That said, if you are winning the team fight and the enemy team is starting to run, you can use a quick Dwarf Toss to get yourself into a better position to body block enemies, preventing them from escaping. This is less of a tip or trick and more of a reminder. Avatar was changed somewhat recently to remove the micro-stun in your auto attacks. Avatar is strictly a defensive cooldown and should be used that way. Try and activate it to give yourself some extra staying power, or to give your healer some breathing room so they can focus on healing someone else. And during long drawn-out team fights where you're mostly just poking at the enemy, or when fighting in the lane, dip out of combat every once in a while to give your second chance a chance to activate. This can save your healer's mana for when the fight really starts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this guide helpful. If you have any variations or tips for this build, feel free to share them in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I will catch you all later.